So yesterday we've presented in one of the sessions the use of millimeter waves for the backhaul and aiming at what will happen in the 5G, where a lot of information will come from the access from the users, and we need to backhaul that in the core network. So here today we're presenting the use again of millimeter waves, but more for the access in that case. So from the small cell, for example, to directly the user. And that will be the case of a dense small cell network deployment. And what we're trying to understand is if the deterministic methods such as ray tracing or at least ray-based simulation techniques still apply at millimeter waves, and in which condition will they perform the best. And so the objective here is really to understand, to assess the performance of this network at millimeter waves with, again, the wondering whether the traditional channel applies. And we know that the higher frequencies bring a lot of challenges, and challenges coming from the environment itself. Obviously, the blockage by the vegetation, the blockage by the vehicular traffic, and also the human, the pedestrian within the screen potentially could block the links. And the work that has been started by Zahid, based at Sierra Leone, France, is to use the classical ray tracing to adapt it with the teams to the millimeter waves, and to include within the environment a couple of, let's say, obstacles. So in that case, in this presentation, Zahid introduces buses that will actually come and block the link. And then future work, we will have pedestrian coming and blocking the link, and other parameters. So here's this example that you may have seen also in the demo that Florian, one of our colleagues based in Toronto, has shown. So this is actually two frequencies that are considered. One at 2.4 gigahertz and the other one at 60 gig. And on the top, you have a classical modeling of the environment. So here you see the buildings that are represented. Here in green, you will see the vegetation. And then we've got a coverage for one small cell. So you can see the shattering that occurs and the various blockage that occur in the scene. So that's at 2.4. At 60, obviously that you have less coverage, you have more blockage or obstruction by the vegetation. And this kind of modeling of the environment is the one that is used classically by the telcos, the wireless carriers, when they want to assess the coverage and the capacity of their network. But at millimeter wave, the way we will model the vegetation matters as well. And we cannot do that in exactly the same way. We need more granularity. So in that case, we've actually post-processed the image that we have to obtain those modeling of the environment, and we had more granularity with those trees. And so here you see the impact again at 2.4 and at 60, but with those little trees that are better represented. And obviously there is a big difference, because when you have different shattering and different abstraction that occur. And so obviously the performance of the network and of the small cell deployment will be also different. So that was the case for one small cell. Sorry, I missed one L. That's my mistake. It's not so propagation loss at 60 gig is roughly 11 dB, almost double what happens at 2.4. And dB, sorry, per meter. So if you have a foliage of 3 meters, that's a significant loss that happens. Then Zahid has taken the case of 10 small cells spread over an area, and we represent the RX power, receive power, versus the distance over 100 meters in that case. And we compare what are the effects of the two representations of the vegetation, what happens with the normal case and with the granularity that is enhanced of the vegetation at 2.4 again and at 60. And so Zahid has taken the percentiles at 90% and 10% of the received power, and we've got the median case. And the observation is that, this break between what we could consider the line of sight and the non-line of sight, the difference is roughly 4 dB between no representation of the vegetation and large blocks and detailed that are in green. So at 60 gig, the difference is much larger. So we almost all user equipment locations will be in non-line of sight instead of line of sight. So the representation of the loss will matter a lot and will significantly change the property of the line of sight conditions for some given users. 23 dB, 40. So then we've taken again a small cell scenario with 18 small cells that are deployed within an area of a few square hundreds of meters and an average inter-site distance that is roughly 80 meters and an EIRP of 40 dB. Then we have our small cells, so the antennas, they are located around 7 meters above ground on lamp posts. You know that lamp posts are one of the preferred locations for the densification of the network. They are very good as lamp posts because generally they have the power, electrical power that is already present, and sometimes even the cable fiber already exists. In the new one, that's what happens. Then Zahid has considered spherical antennas that will help obviously on acting on the intercell interference. And we have a transmit power of 21.5 dBm, one single sector, and the users are all outdoor. The demand is 15 megabytes per second and megabit per second, and the active user density will change in what I will present later on, between 200 users per square kilometer up to 1,000. So we change the load of the network, if you like. And the traffic is a non-full buffer in that case. So when we run the computation based on what we've done in modeling the vegetation, etc., we get those curves. So here we represent the intercell interference on the left and the SINR on the right. And as you may see, there is an increase. So if we consider the 19th percentile, and that we compare the 200 users per square kilometers with the 1,000 users per square kilometers, we observe 9.3 dB, so quite a significant difference. In terms of SINR, at the largest, meaning at the 50th percentile, there is a rather small difference between the differences in load of the cells. And actually, this small decrease in the SINR shows that the small cell network has been able to cope with the higher user density, mostly through the antenna processing, the beamforming and beam steering. So even if there are a lot of intercell interferences, the network is still operating quite interestingly good. So, modeling of the propagation using a small network to analyze the performance, and then Zahid is trying to apply everything, but including some objects in the scenes, in that case the buses. And for that, the idea is to try to reach a level where, starting from the ray-based, we will act with very deterministic features of the scene, so really the building blocks, the vegetations, etc. And slowly, what we're trying to do is to also add some stochastic features, so try to have a kind of hybrid model. The advantages, obviously, of the deterministic aspect is the accuracy. It requires real data, so that's maybe a challenge, but at the same time, that what helps getting a good reliability of the simulation, and we use high resolution of the environment. Concerning the stochastic, in that case we use random variables. We can run a lot of different scenarios within one simulation. The computation times obviously are not in the same order of magnitude, and generally speaking it requires little information about the geometry of the environment. The challenge is again computational effort, and we are constantly shifting the objects, so that's we can't really move the object. We need to run another simulation in order to simulate movement, the motion in the channel. And we had some works earlier on where when you move those objects, it's interesting to consider a kind of correlation between those movements, not to have totally independent motions in the channel. So we had the opportunity to do that, and I don't think Zahid took that in his first work. The challenges of the stochastic part is that it requires a large number of simulations to generalize, or at least to come up with the good convergence of the technology, and we can't really introduce high resolution details, or it's maybe less relevant to do so. So the idea is really to try to combine both advantages and to come up with something that will be useful for our communities. So in the hybrid model, we use different types of objects. We have interactions that will strongly differ based on the frequency and the size of those objects. And the objects can be static or moving. So again, we're combining both assets, and we are, so in his work, in the project 5G wireless that you've introduced, we will consider the buildings, the vegetation, the vehicles, and the human bodies. And here that's only the vehicles that are considered. So Zahid has considered two small cells, and that will interfere to each other. So we're just considering a small network in that case. A fixed user that can be, for example, a user waiting for the bus to come and using his or her phone, and a bus that will actually move along the way. And so here that's the representation of the scene. And in the simulation, we're considering all the interactions occurring in that channel. That's the 3D view. So there's the small cells, that's the user, and that's a block gauge representing a bus in that case. And so there is a multipath occurring in the channel where, depending on the presence or not of the bus, you will have different patterns of rays. And in that case, with the block gauge, you can see with the color code which one are the weakest and which one are the strongest. And because we are using beam steering also, we can actually allocate the power in the best direction. And I won't go into too many details, but here we're representing the mean SINR with the bus position. And Zahid has actually featured for two loads of the network, so 200 users per square kilometers and 1,000, both metrics, the SINR and the intercell interference. And so that just for illustration purposes here, but obviously we can then take a larger network if needed, and we observe different type of SINR and intercell interferences depending on the position of the bus. So here, that's what is represented. So this, the bus is at that location in that case. Then the bus is moving. And so it's, again, very deterministic what happens. So we see directly the effect of that kind of simulation. And we have a couple of measurements at Cyrodiil featuring vehicles that are not buses. That has been done by one of our colleagues who still works at Cyrodiil, who's done his PhD with INSA Lyon, Jean-Marie. And the idea was to understand the channel with lots of objects occurring and understanding the shock rate. So maybe we'll be able to support also this work by the analysis of those measurements. So you see that's very preliminary stuff, but the bases are here in order to try to understand a little bit more the in-street objects and how opaque they are, how obstructive they are for the channel, and with obviously the movement of those vehicles that could also occur in the channel. That's a hybrid way to consider the models. We also represented some fixed objects thanks to radar cross-sections in previous work, so all that will be embedded within the work of Zahid. And there is obviously the interest of considering the beamforming and beam steering antennas to cope with the large intracell interference for the use of that systems. And I'm sure some of you will have the opportunity to see the evolution of Zahid's works within the S5G channel, 5G wireless project. So thank you very much for your attention. Thank you to Zahid for this work.